The other day, I had this brilliant idea that I was going to make a completely original Indiana Jones style RPG, a game that would emulate the experience of those movies and games like Uncharted and franchises like Tomb Raider. But I first needed to see if anyone had done this already, and more importantly, if they had done it well. Yeah, Broken Compass did it in 2020, and they did it really well. Broken Compass is a tabletop RPG by two little mice. Not literally. The authors were Rico Sirignano and Simone Formicola, with art by Daniela Giubellini. It was published in 2020 after a successful Kickstarter, and at the time of this recording in early 2022, has been greatly expanded in a second Kickstarter. Just to be clear, their core rulebook is called Broken Compass Adventure Journal. It's not actually a journal, it's the core rulebook. I think it's worth briefly mentioning the media that inspired the creators. Movies like The Mummy, Indiana Jones, Jumanji, National Treasure, Romancing the Stone, and video games like Tomb Raider, the Uncharted series, and some elements of Assassin's Creed. The stories in these movies and games are centered around protagonists in constant, outrageous danger, traveling to far-flung locales in search of one kind of treasure or another. Pure adventurism. And that speaks to the objectives in this game. As a player or adventurer, you're being put in a situation where really all you want is to get your hands on the treasure, which can be anything from an ancient relic to a forgotten city to a rare plant. Just any kind of MacGuffin you can think of. And your character sheet reflects a person who is geared for adventure. Broken Compass established a rule set it calls the Fortune System. And I'll just say right now, it's a pretty unique and well-polished set of rules. You're given 6 skills, which each have 3 fields. The skills and fields all have 3 diamond slots. You start with 2 slots filled in all skills and 1 slot filled in all fields. When you create your adventurer, you first choose 2 tags from the list. Each tag comes with a field, backup field, 8 skills, and 1 expertise. The expertise comes in the form of a 1-sentence description of an extreme talent that you have. If you're in a skill check situation that involves your stated expertise, you get a free reroll. After you've chosen your 2 tags, you get to fill in the diamond slots for the respective skills and fields listed for those tags. Then when you're done, you can fill in 2 more diamonds of your choice. You also get to add a 3rd expertise of your choice. There's a special tag that may or may not apply to your adventure. An adventurer with the young tag is between 12 and 16 years old, and that tag is written down as the first of your 3 tags. So for example, if you had the tags pilot, rebel, and young, you would write down young first and then rebel and pilot. Having the young tag actually prevents you from having a 3rd expertise, but you can avoid certain bad conditions or feelings. The old tag actually grants you a 4th expertise and 1 experience or scar at the start, but you have a permanent bad feeling called old, as in I feel old, and that can't be removed, which means you're all the closer to being out of commission. The 3rd special tag is called true. You get this if you pick the same tag twice. This usually results in 1 less expertise since you doubled up on a tag, but you start with 2 luck coins, which I'll get to in a minute. Anytime the player has to roll dice to determine an outcome that could result in harm is called a challenge. When facing a challenge, you first define the objective. Let's say, for example, the objective is to get all the way across a rope bridge at full sprint because the gushing lava of a volcano is right behind us. The Fortune Master then needs to determine the difficulty of this challenge. Difficulty ranges from basic to critical to extreme to impossible. In the case of this bridge run, let's just say the challenge is critical. Next, we decide which of our 6 skills will be in play. Let's say it's action with the field of stunt. The number of filled in diamond slots tells us how many d6s we get to throw for this challenge. This dice pool ranges from 3 to 6, but then you need to add or subtract your advantages and disadvantages. These come from your gear, your good and bad feelings, and from environmental or behavioral bonuses granted by the Fortune Master. Just as a quick aside, feelings are tracked along 2 columns, good and bad. These are where you can record injuries in the game, as well as what might be the opposite of injury, maybe like momentum. When you fill up your bad feelings, you are out of commission. Depending on which feeling you have, you get more or fewer dice on certain skill checks. Anyway, let's say we have a sprained ankle, which we will call the bleeding bad feeling. That produces a disadvantage for action checks, which removes 1 die from our dice pool. The maximum that can be removed from disadvantages is 2. The max number of extra dice we can get from advantages is actually 9, which is a pretty extraordinary number of dice in this game. Here's how to succeed with dice. Get them to match. If you match 2 dice in a throw, regardless of their number, that is a basic success, which means you have overcome any basic challenge. If the challenge you're facing is higher than basic and you only throw a basic success, you can at least mitigate the bad result narratively a little bit. If you match 3 dice in a throw, that's a critical success. In our rope bridge example, I would need to land a 3 of a kind. An extreme success requires 4 of a kind, and an impossible success requires a 5 of a kind. If you roll a 6 of a kind, you automatically describe how you resolve the entire situation. If you roll 1 of each number with no matches, that's considered a critical failure. If you roll higher than what was called for, you can narratively add flourish or some extra benefit to your success. The book goes on to explain a couple of gambling mechanics where you can push a roll at the risk of losing some or all rolled successes. As far as failure, the book emphasizes a sort of fail-forward mentality. If I were to have failed my rope bridge roll, for example, instead of my adventurer falling and dying, I still make it across the chasm, but one kind of so-called accident or another happens. The Fortune Master comes up with something, either a bad feeling that I pick up, lost inventory, or even a delayed bad income that comes to bite later on. Dangers are like challenges, but instead of a situational obstacle that ranges from basic to impossible, it's a person or group of enemies which can range from unarmed to fully armed or driving tanks. Although you can face multiple dangers at the same time, the game states that you can't face more than 3 in one roll, but it still could require several different levels of success in a single roll. A subclass of dangers is called traps, which are more stationary enemies in the form of one contraption or another, and can attack adventurers in groups just like the human enemies. For example, a hallway of slow swinging axes might be treated as several basic dangers. You start off with 10 luck points. You only lose luck points when your life is in danger, not when an item or gear is at risk. Anytime you fail a danger roll, your luck pool is depleted. A basic danger takes away 1 luck point. Critical danger takes away 3. Extreme danger takes away 9. And failing an impossible danger removes all of your luck and requires you spending a luck coin to survive. You start with 1 luck coin, which you can spend in a situation like this, or for a number of different useful metagame advantages. If you're using a luck coin to avoid death, you flip the coin or roll a d2 for a 50-50 chance of both avoiding death and keeping the coin. If you fail the flip, you still avoid death, but you lose the coin to the Fortune Master. Adventurers regain all of their luck points anytime they are able to take a break in a so-called safe place. If you don't have any more luck points, nor a luck coin to spend, and you fail another danger roll, you enter certain death. Inventory seems pretty vanilla at first. You have pockets, a bag, and a backpack, each with a limited number of slots to carry various sized things. But what makes inventory really interesting in this game is that if you fail a skill check, certain narrative circumstances can end up with you losing a bag or backpack and everything inside. Those items, in a sense, are part of your health pool and can be lost in lieu of taking on other kinds of disadvantages, like a bad feeling, depending on the circumstances. Losing a bag full of ammo, or even worse, the key to a mystery, can be a pretty hard blow, but I love the importance and the risk placed on inventory here. The book covers details on melee fighting versus ranged fighting, as well as major rivals and their cronies, who should always be better funded and show up at the worst possible time. There are also specifics on how to recover from bad feelings and how to narratively handle clues and keys to find treasure. Furthermore, there is a travel diary sheet for the adventurer group to track these treasures and rivals, as well as their wealth level. One really interesting concept here is the Doomsday Clock, which has 12 slots on it and can advance whenever something really bad in the story happens. But players can choose to avoid or fix problems that are happening to their adventurers by spending an hour away on the clock. It's both an overall story timer and a meta point pool. When the clock strikes midnight, the rival of the story reaches the sought-after treasure, or at the very least, everyone is thrust into the final scene that will determine everything for the story arc. The book leans heavily on the metaphor of television episodes and seasons to frame individual game sessions and entire campaigns. It's a metaphor that works, where an episode is a single session of Broken Compass in which player adventurers play through a standalone plot, but also advance a larger overarching plot. That overarching plot is the campaign or season arc. The TV metaphor extends to another interesting and fairly unique conceit, the pilot. In the TV world, if you're not familiar, a pilot is a first episode of a show that gets shopped to networks as a proof of concept. If the network likes the pilot, they'll pick up a season of the show and production can begin on season 2 and so on. In Broken Compass, a pilot is a whole game session where players and the GM or Fortune Master can play out a concept of what could potentially be an entire season. After a pilot is played, if the players want to continue, they're allowed to make a few specific broad stroke changes to their character's stats before the next session. Towards the end of the book, there's a description of the era of the 1990s, and it lists some technology from that decade. It also describes in detail 6 treasures that can be used in an adventure set in the 1990s and a host of 11 NPCs. At the very end of the book is an era-agnostic pilot episode that Fortune Masters can use as a template for running their first game of Broken Compass. It offers an ideal ebb and flow of action with a variety of locations and 4 pre-generated characters. When I requested a review PDF of this game, the folks at Two Little Mice sent me the stuff from their latest Kickstarter as well. The core rulebook itself comes with one expansion book called Golden Age, which includes over 200 pages of in-depth guidance on how to run the game in the 1920s and 1930s, essentially the Indiana Jones era. The later expansion includes Jolly Roger, a 17th century pirate expansion, Voyage Extraordinaire, a Jules Verne themed expansion, and these are both surprisingly over 200 pages each. But the later expansion pack also includes a third book called What If, which spends about 15 pages each on 15 distinct genre hacks for Broken Compass. Needless to say, I don't have the time in this video to cover this almost 1,000 pages worth of expansion material, but a quick glance at all of them made it obvious that the quality was consistent throughout. Alright, here are my thoughts on Broken Compass. Cons. Conversational. In the core rulebook, there were a lot of paragraphs that seemed a bit chatty and not tightly focused on communicating the rules. Every last rule in the game was clearly communicated, but there were definitely pages of talky, in-character narration that didn't really drive home the rules. Stealing relics. I think back to the 80s when we all enjoyed Indiana Jones, and the thought of flying into a foreign country and raiding cultural relics for the sake of adventure hardly bothered anyone. But now, a million years later, some of us have started to consider the implications of that, not just in the fiction, but in real life. Broken Compass doesn't outright advocate cultural artifact theft, and it's super easy for a Fortune Master to work around that. For example, adventurers could be working on behalf of the host country to recover or preserve the treasure. Pros. Fresh game mechanics. I love the matching numbers resolution with the D6s. I definitely felt like some of the skeleton of the fortune system is borrowed from Free League's Year Zero engine, but here they do away with almost all of the math. And that's saying a lot because there's not much math in the Year Zero engine. What you're left with here is something that plays and resolves very fast, which matches the intended kind of story to be told at the table. Every last setting. I was a bit stunned to see so much ground covered with the expansions. The 3 long-form expansions were really enough to create a living ecosystem for the game, but the What If expansion with 15 more genres, each with a handful of novel game mechanics or hacks, really makes Broken Compass a fully formed and seemingly very mature game. Honestly, there's no way I will try to write my own Indy Jones adventure game now. Thanks to Two Little Mice in Italy, they made a fully fledged, finely polished adventure RPG that scratches that itch so hard that it's bleeding, in a good way. I've left the links below to where you can find this game, and as always, thanks for watching. See ya!